The rain fell hard against the cobblestones of Whitmore Lane. The night pressed down like a heavy blanket. Celestine Harper stood in her small kitchen, washing the last of the dinner plates. Her hands moved slowly through the warm water. She lived alone in a narrow townhouse at the edge of London. The year was 1823. Her life was quiet. Her life was safe. She preferred it that way. She heard a sound outside her front door, a thud, then a groan. Celestine froze. Her heart picked up speed. She dried her hands on her apron and walked toward the entrance hall. The sound came again, louder this time. Someone was at her door. She reached for the handle. Her fingers trembled. She should not open it. A woman alone at night should never open her door to a stranger. But something pulled at her chest, a feeling she could not name. She turned the handle and pulled the door open. A man collapsed at her feet. He fell forward into her hallway. His coat was torn. His hair was dark and wet from the rain. Blood stained his white shirt. He looked up at her with eyes the color of storm clouds. His face was pale. His breath came fast and shallow. "Please," he whispered. His voice was rough, desperate. "Hide me." Celestine stepped back. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She stared at him. He was tall. Even on the ground she could see his height. His shoulders were broad beneath the ruined coat. His hands pressed against the floor as he tried to lift himself. His fingers shook. "Please," he said again. "They are coming." "Who?" Celestine found her voice. It sounded small in the quiet hallway. "Who is coming?" Before he could answer, she heard boots on the street. Many boots. The sound echoed through the rain. Voices shouted commands. Celestine's stomach dropped. The man looked up at her, his eyes locked onto hers. "The Royal Guards," he said. "If they find me, I am dead." Celestine's mind raced. Royal Guards. This man was being hunted by the Crown. She should push him back outside. She should close the door. She should protect herself. But she did not. Instead, she grabbed his arm. "Get up," she hissed. "Quickly!" He struggled to his feet. He leaned heavily against her. She could feel the heat of his body through his wet clothes. She could smell rain and blood and something else, something like cedar and smoke. She did not have time to think about it. "This way," she said. She pulled him down the hallway. Her townhouse was small. There were few places to hide. She pushed open the door to the pantry beneath the stairs. It was narrow and dark. Shelves lined the walls. Jars of preserves and sacks of flour crowded the space. "In here," she said. He squeezed through the door. He turned to face her. Even in the darkness, she could see the intensity in his eyes. "Thank you," he said. His voice was softer now, almost gentle. Celestine did not answer. She closed the door and turned the key. She slipped the key into her apron pocket. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The knock came 3 seconds later, loud, commanding, fists against wood. Celestine walked to the front door. She smoothed her apron with shaking hands. She took a breath. She opened the door. 5 men stood on her doorstep. They wore the red and gold uniforms of the Royal Guard. Their faces were hard. Rain dripped from their helmets. The man at the front stepped forward. He was older than the others. His jaw was square. His eyes were cold. "Good evening, miss," he said. His tone was not polite. "We are searching for a fugitive, a dangerous man. Have you seen anyone on this street tonight?" Celestine shook her head. "No, sir. I have been inside all evening." The man studied her face. His gaze moved slowly over her features. Celestine forced herself to stay still. She forced herself to meet his eyes. She could feel sweat forming at the back of her neck despite the cold air. "You live alone?" the man asked. "Yes, sir." "No servants?" "I cannot afford servants, sir." The man looked past her into the hallway. "May we search your home?" Celestine's throat tightened. Why would you need to search my home, sir? I have done nothing wrong. The fugitive was seen on this street, the man said. He is injured. He cannot have gone far. Celestine lifted her chin. I assure you, there is no one here but me. The man stared at her for a long moment. Celestine did not blink. She did not look away. Her fingernails dug into her palms. Finally, the man stepped back. If you see anything unusual, you will report it immediately. Of course, sir. The men turned and walked back into the rain. Celestine watched them go. She watched until they disappeared around the corner. Then she closed the door. She locked it. She leaned her forehead against the wood and let out a shaking breath. What had she just done? She walked back to the pantry. She unlocked the door and pulled it open. The man was sitting on the floor. His head rested against a shelf. His eyes were closed. For a moment, Celestine thought he had passed out. Then his eyes opened. He looked up at her. They are gone? He asked. For now. He nodded slowly. He tried to stand, but his legs gave out. Celestine caught his arm. She steadied him. You are hurt, she said. It is nothing. You are bleeding. I have been through worse. Celestine frowned. She guided him out of the pantry and into the small sitting room. She helped him onto the sofa. He sank into the cushions with a groan. His face was even paler now. The blood on his shirt had spread. Take off your coat, Celestine said. He looked at her. A small smile touched his lips. Are you always this commanding? When someone is bleeding in my sitting room, yes. He laughed. It was a soft sound, tired. He shrugged out of his coat. Celestine could see the wound now, a long gash across his ribs. It was still bleeding, not heavily, but enough to concern her. Wait here, she said. She went to the kitchen and gathered supplies, clean cloth, water, a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet. She returned to the sitting room. The man watched her as she set everything on the small table. This will hurt, she said. I am accustomed to pain. Celestine knelt beside him. She pressed the cloth to his wound. He hissed through his teeth but did not pull away. She cleaned the blood carefully. The wound was not as deep as she had feared. It would heal. She poured whiskey over the cloth and pressed it to his skin. His hand shot out and gripped the arm of the sofa. His knuckles turned white. Sorry, Celestine whispered. Do not apologize for saving my life. She glanced up at him. His eyes were on her face. They were intense, focused. She looked away quickly. She finished cleaning the wound and wrapped it with clean cloth. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. She had tended her father's injuries many times before he died. She knew what to do. When she was done, she sat back on her heels. You should rest, she said. I cannot stay here, he said. It is not safe for you. You can barely stand. I will manage. Do not be foolish. He smiled again. This time it reached his eyes. You do not even know my name and you are calling me foolish. Celestine stood. She crossed her arms. Then tell me your name. He hesitated. She could see the conflict on his face. He was deciding whether to trust her. Finally, he spoke. Thorn, he said. My name is Thorn. Thorn what? Another pause. Longer this time. Just Thorn. Celestine raised an eyebrow. You are hiding more than just yourself. Yes. At least he was honest. Celestine sighed. My name is Celestine. Celestine Harper. A beautiful name. She ignored the compliment. Why are the royal guards hunting you? Thorn's expression darkened. That is a long story. I have time. You have risked enough already. I risked my safety the moment I opened that door, Celestine said. Her voice was sharper now. The least you can do is tell me why. Thorn studied her. She could see him weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. Sit down, he said. This will take a while. Celestine sat in the chair across from him. She folded her hands in her lap and waited. Thorn leaned back against the sofa. He stared at the ceiling. "I am not just Thorn," he said. "I am Thorn Ashford, the Duke of Greystone." Celestine's breath caught. A duke. She had hidden a duke in her pantry. She had lied to the royal guard for a duke. Her hands gripped the fabric of her dress. "Why would the crown hunt a duke?" she asked. "Because I know the truth," Thorn said, "and the truth is dangerous." "What truth?" Thorn looked at her. His eyes were hard now, angry. "The king is being poisoned." The words hung in the air between them. Celestine felt her heart skip. "What?" "Someone in the palace is slowly poisoning King George," Thorn said. "I discovered the plot 3 days ago. I tried to warn the king's advisors, but the man behind it is powerful. He turned them against me. He claimed I was the one planning treason. Now the entire royal guard is searching for me." Celestine shook her head. "This is impossible." "I wish it were." "Who is behind it?" Thorn's jaw tightened. "The king's own brother, Prince Edward." Celestine stood abruptly. This was too much. This was beyond anything she could handle. She was a simple woman, a seamstress who lived alone. She had no business being involved in royal plots and poisoned kings. "I cannot help you," she said. "You need to leave." Thorn stood as well. He swayed slightly but caught himself. "I understand," he said. "You have already done more than anyone could ask." He moved toward the door, but Celestine saw the way he favored his injured side. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes. If he left now, the guards would find him. They would kill him, and the king would die. "Wait," she said. Thorn turned. "You can stay tonight," Celestine said. "But tomorrow you must go." Relief crossed his face. "Thank you." Celestine nodded. She showed him to the small guest room upstairs. It was barely large enough for a bed and a washstand, but it was warm and dry. Thorn sank onto the bed with a grateful sigh. "Sleep," Celestine said. "We will talk more in the morning." She left the room and closed the door. She stood in the hallway for a long moment. Her mind spun. A duke, a poisoned king, royal guards. What had she gotten herself into? But something else stirred in her chest, something she had not felt in years. Purpose. For so long her life had been small and contained, safe but empty. Now, suddenly, it felt large and terrifying and strangely alive. She went to her own room and lay down, but sleep did not come. Morning arrived grey and cold. Celestine rose early and dressed quickly. She went downstairs and started a fire in the kitchen. She prepared tea and bread. Simple food, but it would have to do. She heard footsteps on the stairs. Thorn appeared in the doorway. He looked better than he had the night before. Colour had returned to his face. He had cleaned himself up as best he could. His dark hair was pushed back from his forehead. His shirt was wrinkled, but no longer bloody. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," Celestine replied. She poured tea into a cup and handed it to him. "How is your wound?" "Better. You have skilled hands." She felt heat rise to her cheeks. She turned away and busied herself with the bread. "Sit," she said. "You should eat." Thorn sat at the small table. He watched her as she moved around the kitchen. Celestine could feel his gaze on her. It made her nervous. She was not used to having anyone in her home, especially not a man, especially not a duke. "Tell me about yourself," Thorn said. Celestine glanced at him. "Why?" "You saved my life. I would like to know who you are." Celestine set the bread on the table. She sat across from him. "There is not much to tell. My father was a clockmaker. He died 2 years ago. I support myself by sewing. I live alone. I have no family." "You never married?" "No." "Why not?" Celestine met his eyes. "That is a personal question. I am a curious man." I had an engagement once, Celestine said. She did not know why she was telling him this. Perhaps it was because he had trusted her with his own secrets. He left me 3 days before the wedding. He found a woman with a larger dowry. Thorne's expression softened. I am sorry. Celestine shrugged. It was a long time ago. It still hurts. She did not answer. Because it was true. It did still hurt. Not because she had loved the man, but because it had confirmed what she had always suspected. She was not enough. Not pretty enough. Not wealthy enough. Not interesting enough. He was a fool, Thorne said quietly. Celestine looked up sharply. Thorne was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. His eyes held something she could not name, something that made her heart beat faster. You do not know me, she said. I know enough. The air between them felt heavy, charged. Celestine stood quickly. I should check your bandages, she said. Thorne stood as well. He lifted his shirt. Celestine stepped closer. Her hands shook slightly as she unwrapped the cloth. The wound looked clean, no signs of infection. She replaced the bandage with a fresh one. Her fingers brushed against his skin. It was warm, solid. You are healing well, she said. Her voice sounded breathless. Thanks to you. Celestine stepped back. She needed distance. She needed air. What will you do now? She asked. Thorne lowered his shirt. I need to reach someone I trust. Someone who can help me prove the prince's guilt. Who? My cousin. He is a member of Parliament. If I can get to him, he can arrange a private audience with the king. That sounds dangerous. It is. The guards will be watching the roads. I know. Celestine bit her lip. She should let him go. She should wish him well and return to her quiet life. But she could not. Something inside her would not allow it. I will help you, she said. Thorne stared at her. No, it is too dangerous. You said the guards will be watching for you, a man traveling alone, but a couple traveling together would draw less attention. Celestine, I can pose as your wife. We can take a coach to your cousin's estate. No one will suspect us. Thorne shook his head. If we are caught, you will be arrested as well. You could be hanged for treason. Then we will not be caught. Why would you do this? You do not know me. Celestine looked at him. She thought about her empty life, her quiet days, her lonely nights. She thought about the feeling that had stirred in her chest the night before. Purpose, meaning, something more. Because it is the right thing to do, she said, and because I am tired of being afraid. Thorne studied her face. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the desire to protect her warring with the need for help. Finally, he nodded. All right, he said, but you must do exactly as I say. If there is danger, you run. You do not look back. Do you understand? Yes. I mean it, Celestine. I understand. Thorne reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm and strong. Thank you, he said. I will not forget this. Celestine's heart hammered in her chest. She pulled her hand away gently. We should prepare, she said. We leave at noon. They spent the morning gathering supplies. Celestine packed a small bag with clothes and food. Thorne wrote a letter to his cousin explaining the situation. He sealed it with wax and tucked it inside his coat. Celestine changed into her best dress. It was dark blue with simple embroidery at the collar. She pinned her hair up and covered it with a bonnet. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like a respectable married woman. No one would suspect her. Thorne had found a clean shirt in her father's old trunk. It was slightly too small, but it would do. He looked less like a wounded fugitive and more like a traveling gentleman. They left the townhouse just before noon. The streets were busy. People hurried past with their heads down against the drizzle. Celestine and Thorne walked arm in arm. She could feel the tension in his body. His eyes scanned every face, every shadow. "Relax," she whispered. "You look suspicious." Thorn forced a smile. "I am not accustomed to running." "Then pretend you are taking your wife on holiday." He glanced down at her. "Is that what we are doing?" "That is what everyone else will think." They reached the coaching inn without incident. Thorn purchased tickets for the next coach heading north. They waited in the corner of the crowded common room. Celestine kept her eyes down. Thorn kept his hand on her arm. The coach arrived 20 minutes later. It was old and worn but sturdy. The driver loaded their bags onto the roof. Celestine climbed inside. Thorn followed. 3 other passengers were already seated. An elderly woman with a small dog, a young man who looked like a clerk, a middle-aged merchant with a red face. The coach lurched forward. Celestine settled into her seat. Thorn sat beside her. Their shoulders touched. She could feel the heat of his body through the layers of fabric. It was not unpleasant. The elderly woman smiled at them. "Are you newlyweds?" she asked. Celestine felt her face flush, but Thorn answered smoothly. "Yes, ma'am. We are traveling to visit family." "How lovely," the woman said. "You make a handsome couple." Celestine did not know what to say. She smiled weakly and looked out the window. The city was fading behind them. Fields and trees took its place. The rain had stopped. Weak sunlight broke through the clouds. They traveled for hours. The road was rough. The coach bounced and swayed. The merchant fell asleep and began to snore. The young clerk read a book. The elderly woman talked to her dog in a soft voice. Thorn leaned close to Celestine. His breath was warm against her ear. "Are you all right?" he whispered. She nodded. "Yes." "You are very brave." "I do not feel brave." "That is what makes you brave." Celestine turned to look at him. His face was very close to hers. She could see the flecks of silver in his grey eyes. She could see the small scar above his left eyebrow. She wondered how he had gotten it. "What are you thinking?" Thorn asked. "I am thinking that I do not know you at all," Celestine said. "And yet here I am in a coach with you, pretending to be your wife. Do you regret it?" "I do not know yet." Thorn smiled. It was a real smile this time, not tired or forced. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less burdened. "I am glad you opened your door," he said. "So am I," Celestine admitted. But she didn't know if that was true, because something was happening inside her chest. Something that felt like hope and fear tangled together. She barely knew this man, but she could not deny the pull she felt toward him. The way her heart jumped when he looked at her. The way her skin tingled when he touched her arm. This was dangerous. Not just because of the royal guards, but because she was starting to care, and caring always led to pain. They stopped at an inn just before nightfall. The coach driver announced they would rest here for the night and continue in the morning. Celestine felt a flutter of nervousness. She had not thought about the sleeping arrangements. Thorn seemed to read her mind. "We will need to share a room," he said quietly as they climbed down from the coach. "It will look strange if we do not." "Of course," Celestine said. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. They entered the inn. It was warm and noisy. The smell of roasted meat and ale filled the air. Thorn approached the innkeeper and requested a room. The innkeeper handed him a key and pointed toward the stairs. The room was small but clean. A bed stood against one wall. A washstand stood against the other. A single window looked out onto the courtyard. Celestine stood in the doorway. Thorn set their bags down. An awkward silence filled the space. "I will sleep on the floor," Thorn said. "You are injured. You should take the bed." "I am a gentleman. I will not." "The bed is large enough for both of us," Celestine said. She could not believe the words coming out of her mouth. "We can share it, as long as you stay on your side." Thorn's eyebrows rose. "Are you certain?" "We are supposed to be married. If anyone sees you sleeping on the floor, they will ask questions." It was a practical argument, a logical one. but Celestine's heart was pounding. "All right," Thorn said, "but I promise I will behave." They went downstairs for dinner. The common room was crowded with travelers. Celestine and Thorn sat at a corner table. They ate in silence. The food was simple but good. Stew and bread and ale. Celestine noticed a group of men at the bar. They wore dark coats and carried themselves with authority. Her stomach tightened. "Thorn," she whispered. He followed her gaze. His expression darkened. "Royal Guards," he said quietly. "What do we do?" "We stay calm. We finish our meal. We go upstairs like any normal couple." Celestine's hands trembled. She set down her spoon. One of the guards turned and looked in their direction. His eyes swept over the room. They passed over Celestine and Thorn without pausing. But Celestine's heart did not slow. Thorn reached across the table and took her hand. "Look at me," he said. She did. His eyes held hers steady. "We are just a married couple on holiday," he said. "Remember?" Celestine nodded. She forced herself to breathe. Thorn's hand was warm around hers, strong, reassuring. They finished their meal slowly. They spoke in low voices about nothing important: the weather, the quality of the food, the condition of the roads. Anyone watching would see two people comfortable with each other, relaxed. But beneath the table, Celestine's knee bounced with nervous energy, and Thorn's grip on her hand never loosened. Finally, they stood. Thorn guided her toward the stairs with his hand on the small of her back. Celestine felt the weight of eyes on them, but she did not look back. She kept her head down and climbed the stairs. They reached their room. Thorn closed the door and locked it. He leaned against it and let out a breath. "That was close," he said. "Too close." Thorn moved to the window and looked out. "They are searching everywhere. Prince Edward must be desperate." "What if they search the rooms?" "Then we play our parts. You are my wife. I am your husband. We have nothing to hide." Celestine nodded, but her stomach was still in knots. She prepared for bed behind a screen in the corner. She changed into her nightgown and brushed out her hair. When she emerged, Thorn was sitting on the edge of the bed. He had removed his boots and coat. His shirt was open at the collar. She could see the edge of the bandage beneath. "How is your wound?" she asked. "It is fine." "Let me check." She crossed the room and knelt in front of him. She unwrapped the bandage carefully. The wound was healing well. She applied fresh cloth and tied it securely. Her hands lingered on his ribs. She could feel his heartbeat beneath her palm, steady and strong. "Celestine," Thorn said softly. She looked up. His face was very close. His eyes were dark in the candlelight. She could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands gripped the edge of the bed. "Yes?" she whispered. "I should not feel this way about you." Her breath caught. "What way?" "Like I would burn down the world to keep you safe." The words hung in the air between them. Celestine's heart thundered in her chest. She should pull away. She should remind him that this was temporary, that they were strangers playing a part. But she did not. Instead, she reached up and touched his face. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. He closed his eyes. A shudder ran through his body. "Thorn," she said. He opened his eyes. "Tell me to stop and I will." "Stop what?" "This." He leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative. His lips were soft against hers. Celestine's eyes fluttered closed. She had been kissed before, but never like this. Never with such tenderness, such reverence. Thorn's hand came up to cup her face. His thumb stroked her cheek. Celestine felt something inside her crack open. All the walls she had built over the years, all the protection she had wrapped around her heart. It all crumbled. She kissed him back. Her hands slid into his hair. He pulled her closer. The kiss deepened, grew more urgent. Celestine felt heat flood through her body. She felt alive. She felt seen. Thorn pulled back. He rested his forehead against hers. They were both breathing hard. "I did not plan that," he said. "Neither did I. But I do not regret it." "Neither do I." He smiled. Then he kissed her again. Slower this time. Deeper. Celestine lost herself in it, lost herself in him. When they finally pulled apart, Thorne's eyes were bright. "We should sleep," he said. His voice was rough. "Yes." But neither of them moved. Finally, Celestine stood. She climbed into the bed and moved to the far side. Thorne blew out the candle and joined her. The mattress dipped under his weight. Celestine lay very still. She could hear his breathing in the darkness, feel the warmth of his body beside hers. "Good night, Celestine," Thorne whispered. "Good night." But sleep was a long time coming, because Celestine could still taste him on her lips, and she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Morning came too soon. Celestine woke to find herself curled against Thorne's side. Her head rested on his chest. His arm was wrapped around her. She could hear his heartbeat beneath her ear, steady and strong. She should move. She should pull away before he woke. But she did not want to. For just a moment, she allowed herself to stay, to feel safe, to feel wanted. Thorne stirred. His arm tightened around her. "Celestine," he murmured. She lifted her head. His eyes were still closed. A small smile played at his lips. He was still half asleep. "I am here," she whispered. His eyes opened. For a moment, confusion crossed his face. Then memory returned. He looked down at her. His expression softened. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning. I apologize. I did not mean to. It is all right. I was the one who—" She trailed off. Her cheeks burned. Thorne's smile widened. "We both did." Celestine sat up. She tried to smooth her hair. It was a hopeless task. She was sure she looked a mess. "We should get ready," she said. "The coach leaves soon." They dressed quickly. There was a new tension between them, not uncomfortable, but charged, aware. Every glance felt weighted. Every accidental touch sent sparks through Celestine's skin. They went downstairs for breakfast. The common room was less crowded than the night before. The royal guards were gone. Celestine felt relief wash over her. They ate quickly, bread and cheese and weak tea. Then they climbed back into the coach. The same passengers were already seated. The elderly woman greeted them with a warm smile. "Did you sleep well, dears?" she asked. "Very well, thank you," Thorne said. His hand found Celestine's and squeezed gently. The coach rolled forward. The day was clearer than the one before. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Celestine watched the countryside pass by. Rolling hills, stone walls, sheep dotting the fields. "We should reach my cousin's estate by nightfall," Thorne said quietly. "What will you tell him?" "The truth. He is one of the few men I trust completely." "And then?" "And then we prove Prince Edward's guilt. We save the king." Celestine nodded, but a part of her felt sad. Because once this was over, Thorne would return to his life, and she would return to hers. They were from different worlds. He was a duke. She was a seamstress. There was no future for them. But she pushed the thought away. She would worry about that later. For now, she would enjoy this moment, this feeling of adventure, of purpose, of being close to someone who made her feel alive. The hours passed slowly. The coach stopped once for the horses to rest. Celestine and Thorne stretched their legs. They walked a short distance from the road. The air was cold but fresh. Celestine breathed deeply. "Are you all right?" Thorne asked. "Yes, just thinking." "About what?" Celestine hesitated. Then she decided to be honest. "About what happens after, when this is over." Thorn's expression grew serious. I have been thinking about that too. And? He took her hand. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I do not want this to end. Celestine's heart skipped. Thorn! I know what you are going to say. I am a duke. You are a commoner. It is impossible. Society would never accept it. It is not just society. It is reality. Your world and mine are too different. Thorn stepped closer. His free hand came up to cup her face. Then we will make a new world. One where it does not matter. That is a fantasy. Then let me live in it a little longer. He kissed her. Right there on the side of the road, with the wind whipping around them and the coach waiting in the distance. Celestine melted into him. She let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe it was possible. When they pulled apart, Thorn rested his forehead against hers. Whatever happens, he said, I will not forget you. Nor I you. They walked back to the coach hand in hand. The other passengers watched them with knowing smiles. Young love, their expressions seemed to say. How sweet. But this was more than sweet. This was terrifying and wonderful and impossible all at once. They reached the estate just as the sun was setting. It was a large manor house surrounded by trees. The grounds were well maintained. Lights glowed in the windows. Thorn helped Celestine down from the coach. He paid the driver and retrieved their bags. Then he led her up the gravel path to the front door. He knocked. A butler answered. The man's eyes widened when he saw Thorn. Your Grace, the butler said. He sounded shocked. Is my cousin at home? Thorn asked. Yes, Your Grace. Please, come in. They were led into a drawing room. It was elegantly furnished. A fire crackled in the hearth. Celestine felt out of place in her simple dress. She stood near the door, uncertain. Thorn took her hand. Stay with me, he said. Before she could answer, the door opened. A man entered. He was tall, with sandy hair and kind eyes. He looked a few years older than Thorn. Thorn! The man exclaimed. We heard you were dead. Not yet, Julian. Julian crossed the room and embraced Thorn. Then he stepped back and looked at Celestine. And who is this? This is Celestine Harper, Thorn said. She saved my life. Julian's eyebrows rose. Did she now? It is a long story. Then you had better sit down and tell me. They sat. Thorn explained everything. The discovery of the poison plot, Prince Edward's betrayal, the royal guards hunting him, Celestine's help. Julian listened without interrupting. His expression grew darker with each word. When Thorn finished, Julian leaned back in his chair. This is worse than I thought, he said. You knew? Thorn asked. I had suspicions. There have been rumours, whispers in Parliament, but I had no proof. Now we do. The letter I sent contains the evidence, names, dates, the poison used. Julian nodded. I will arrange an audience with the king, but it must be done carefully. If Prince Edward suspects, he will strike first. How long will it take? 3 days, maybe 4. Thorn's jaw tightened. The king may not have 4 days. Then we work quickly. Julian stood. He rang for a servant. A young maid appeared. Prepare the guest rooms, Julian said. Our friends will be staying with us. The maid curtsied and left. Julian turned to Celestine. You are very brave, Miss Harper. Not many would risk themselves for a stranger. Celestine felt her cheeks warm. I only did what was right. And that makes you remarkable. Thorn's hand found hers under the table. She glanced at him. His eyes held gratitude and something more, something that made her heart ache. They were shown to their rooms. Separate rooms this time. Celestine felt a strange sense of loss as she closed the door behind her. The room was beautiful, far nicer than anything she had ever seen. A large bed with silk curtains, a wardrobe filled with dresses that were not hers, a vanity with a silver mirror. She sat on the edge of the bed and let out a breath. This was real. She was in a duke's home, hiding from the royal guard, helping to save the king. It felt like a dream. A knock came at the door. Celestine stood and opened it. Thorn stood in the hallway. He had changed his clothes. He wore a fresh shirt and coat. He looked every inch the duke now. "May I come in?" he asked. Celestine stepped aside. Thorn entered and closed the door behind him. They stood facing each other. The air felt heavy. "I wanted to thank you," Thorn said, "properly, for everything you have done." "You have already thanked me." "Not enough." He crossed the room. He stopped inches from her. Celestine's breath caught. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the cedar and smoke scent of him. "Celestine," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I am falling in love with you." The words struck her like a physical blow. Her knees weakened. She reached out and gripped the bedpost for support. "Thorn, you cannot—" "I can, and I am. We have known each other for 2 days. 2 days can change everything." Celestine shook her head. Tears pricked her eyes. "This is impossible. When this is over, you will go back to your life. You will marry someone appropriate, someone from your world, and I will go back to my little townhouse. We will never see each other again." "That does not have to be true." "It does. You know it does." Thorn's hands came up to cup her face. His thumbs brushed away the tears that had started to fall. "Then give me tonight," he said. "Give me this moment. Let me pretend that we have a future." Celestine closed her eyes. She should say no. She should protect herself. But she was tired of being careful, tired of being afraid. "Yes," she whispered. Thorn kissed her. It was different from the kisses before, deeper, more desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her, the feel of her. Celestine kissed him back with everything she had, all the loneliness she had carried for years, all the hope she had tried to bury, all the love she had never been brave enough to give. They moved to the bed. Thorn's hands tangled in her hair. Celestine's fingers worked at the buttons of his shirt. They came together in a tangle of limbs and breathless whispers. "Are you certain?" Thorn asked. His voice was rough. "Yes. I do not want to hurt you. You will hurt me more if you stop." So he did not stop. They made love slowly, carefully. Thorn was gentle, reverent. He touched her like she was something precious, something worth savoring. Celestine felt cherished, seen, loved. Afterwards, they lay tangled together. Thorn's arm was around her. Her head rested on his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady. "I meant what I said," Thorn whispered into the darkness. "I am falling in love with you." "I know." "And you?" Celestine was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. "I have already fallen." Thorn's arm tightened around her. He kissed the top of her head. "Then we will find a way." "How?" "I do not know yet, but I will." Celestine wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that love was enough, but she had lived long enough to know that it was not. The world did not care about love. It cared about titles and money and social standing. But tonight, she would let herself hope. Just for tonight. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Julian worked tirelessly to arrange the audience with the king. Thorn met with trusted allies. Plans were made. Strategies were discussed. Celestine felt useless. She was not part of this world. She did not understand politics or court intrigue. She spent her days wandering the estate, reading in the library, staring out windows. But every night, Thorn came to her room. And every night, they lost themselves in each other. It was reckless, dangerous, but neither of them could stop. On the 4th day, Julian burst into the drawing room where Celestine and Thorn were having tea. "It is done," Julian said. His face was flushed with excitement. I have secured an audience with the king, tomorrow at noon. Thorn stood. You are certain it is safe? As certain as I can be. I have arranged for extra guards, men I trust. They will keep Prince Edward away. Thorn nodded. Then we go tomorrow. That night, Thorn and Celestine did not make love. Instead, they lay together in the darkness and talked about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. What will you do after this is over? Celestine asked. I do not know. Return to my duties, I suppose. Manage my estates. Sit in Parliament. It sounds lonely. It is. I have always been surrounded by people, but I have never felt less alone than I do with you. Celestine's chest tightened. Thorn. I know. I know we cannot be together, but let me say this. Please. She nodded. If I could choose any life, Thorn said, I would choose one with you in it. I would give up my title, my estates, everything, just to wake up beside you every morning. Tears slipped down Celestine's cheeks. Do not say that. Why not? It is the truth. Because it makes this harder. Thorn pulled her close. I am sorry. I am being selfish. No, you are being honest, and I love you for it. They held each other until dawn. Morning came cold and gray. Celestine dressed carefully. She wore the nicest dress she had. A maid had helped her pin up her hair. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like someone else, someone who belonged in this world. But she knew it was an illusion. Thorn knocked on her door. He wore formal attire, a dark coat, a pristine cravat. He looked every inch the Duke, powerful, commanding. Are you ready? He asked. No, but I will come anyway. He smiled. He offered his arm. She took it. They rode to the palace in Julian's carriage. The city streets were crowded. People went about their daily lives, unaware of the drama unfolding. Celestine watched them through the window. She envied their normalcy. The palace gates loomed ahead. Guards checked their credentials. Then they were waved through. The carriage rolled into the courtyard. Celestine's heart pounded. This was it, the moment everything had been leading to. They were escorted into the palace. The halls were grand, marble floors, gilded walls. Portraits of kings and queens stared down at them. Celestine felt small, out of place. Thorn must have sensed her discomfort. He squeezed her hand. You belong here as much as anyone, he whispered. She wished she could believe him. They were led to a private chamber. The king sat in a high-backed chair. He was older than Celestine had expected. His face was pale. His hands trembled slightly. The poison was already taking its toll. Julian stepped forward and bowed. Your Majesty, may I present the Duke of Greystone? Thorn bowed deeply. Your Majesty. The king's eyes narrowed. We were told you were a traitor. That is what Prince Edward wanted you to believe, Your Majesty. And why would my own brother lie to us? Because he is the one trying to kill you. Silence filled the room. The king's expression hardened. Those are serious accusations, Your Grace. I have proof, Your Majesty. Thorn produced the letter. He handed it to the king. The old man read it slowly. His face grew darker with each line. When he finished, he looked up. This is why Edward wanted you dead, the king said. You discovered his plot. Yes, Your Majesty. And this woman? The king's gaze shifted to Celestine. Who is she? She saved my life, Your Majesty. Without her, I would not be standing here. The king studied Celestine. She forced herself to meet his eyes, to stand tall. What is your name, child? The king asked. Celestine Harper, Your Majesty. And you did this knowing the danger? Yes, Your Majesty. Why? Celestine hesitated. Then she spoke the truth. Because it was right, and because I care about him. The king's expression softened. Rare to see such loyalty. He turned back to Thorn. "We will have Prince Edward arrested immediately, and we will have the royal physician examine us for poison." "Thank you, Your Majesty." The king stood. He moved slowly, like every step pained him. "You have done your country a great service, Your Grace. Name your reward." Thorn did not hesitate. "Allow me to marry the woman I love." Celestine's breath caught. She stared at Thorn. He was looking at the king with determination. "This commoner?" the king asked. "Yes, Your Majesty. Society will not approve." "I do not care about society's approval. I care about her." The king looked at Celestine, then back at Thorn. A small smile touched his lips. "Very well. You have our blessing. Marry her, and let anyone who objects answer to us." Celestine felt tears stream down her face. Thorn turned to her. He dropped to one knee right there in front of the king. "Celestine Harper," he said, "will you marry me?" She could barely speak. "Yes." He stood and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her in front of the king and Julian and all the guards. And Celestine did not care, because for the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Prince Edward was arrested. He confessed to everything, hoping for mercy. He received none. The king began treatment for the poison. Slowly, his health improved. Thorn and Celestine were married in a small ceremony at Julian's estate. It was simple but beautiful. Celestine wore a dress of ivory silk. Thorn wore his formal attire. Julian stood as witness. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Thorn kissed her like she was the most precious thing in the world. They moved into Thorn's estate. It was larger than Celestine had imagined. Sprawling grounds, elegant rooms, an army of servants. But Thorn made it clear that Celestine was the lady of the house. Her word was law. At first, society gossiped. A duke marrying a seamstress. It was scandalous, unheard of. But the king's blessing silenced most of the criticism, and those who continued to whisper found themselves excluded from court. Celestine adjusted to her new life slowly. She still felt out of place at grand dinners. She still stumbled over the proper forms of address. But Thorn was patient. He stood beside her. He defended her. He loved her. And slowly, Celestine began to believe she belonged. One evening, they sat together in the library. A fire crackled in the hearth. Celestine was reading. Thorn was going over estate documents. It was peaceful, comfortable. "Do you ever regret it?" Celestine asked suddenly. Thorn looked up. "Regret what?" "Marrying me, choosing this life." Thorn set down his papers. He crossed the room and knelt beside her chair. He took her hands in his. "Celestine," he said, "you are the best decision I have ever made. The only decision that truly mattered. I would choose you 1,000 times over. Even though I am not a duchess by birth? Especially because of that. You are real. You are brave. You are kind. You are everything I never knew I needed." Celestine felt tears prick her eyes, happy tears this time. "I love you," she whispered. "And I love you, more than anything in this world." He kissed her, gentle and sweet, the kind of kiss that promised forever. When they pulled apart, Celestine smiled. "I am glad I opened my door that night." "So am I." "Even though you collapsed at my feet?" Thorn laughed. "Especially because I collapsed at your feet. It was the luckiest collapse of my life." Celestine laughed too. It felt good. It felt right. She thought back to that rainy night, the moment she heard the sound at her door, the moment she made the choice to open it. She had been afraid, uncertain, but she had done it anyway, and that choice had changed everything. Months turned into years. Celestine and Thorn's love only deepened. They faced challenges, whispers from society, difficult estate decisions, but they faced them together. Celestine never forgot where she came from. She used her position to help other women in situations like hers. She opened a school for girls who could not afford education. She provided work for seamstresses who needed income. Thorne supported her in everything. He was proud of her. He told her so every day. They had children, a daughter first, then a son. They raised them with love and kindness. They taught them that titles did not define worth, that courage came in many forms. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Thorne took Celestine back to her old townhouse on Whitmore Lane. It had been empty for years, but Thorne had maintained it, kept it exactly as it was. "Why?" Celestine asked as they stood in her old sitting room. "Because this is where it all began," Thorne said. "This is where you saved my life, where I fell in love with you. I never want to forget that." Celestine looked around. The room was smaller than she remembered, simpler, but it was filled with memories. Good ones now. "I was so afraid that night," she said, "when I heard you at my door." "What made you open it?" Celestine thought about it. "Hope, I think. I had been alone for so long, and some part of me hoped that something would change, that my life would be more than just quiet and safe." "And is it?" Celestine turned to him. She smiled. "It is everything I never dared to dream." Thorne pulled her close. He kissed her forehead. "You are everything I never dared to dream." They stood there in the quiet townhouse, holding each other, remembering the night that changed everything. Later, as they walked back to their carriage, Celestine looked up at the sky. It was clear. Stars shone brightly. She thought about fate, about choices, about the door she had opened. "What are you thinking?" Thorne asked. "I am thinking that I would do it all again. Every moment, every choice. Even the scary parts? Especially the scary parts, because they led me to you." Thorne smiled. He took her hand. "Then we are both lucky." "Yes, we are." They climbed into the carriage. As they rode through the streets of London, Celestine rested her head on Thorne's shoulder. She felt content, complete. She had opened her door to a stranger and found her home. She had risked everything and gained everything. She had been afraid, but she had been brave, and that made all the difference. Years later, when Celestine was old and grey, she would tell her grandchildren the story. The story of the Duke who collapsed at her door. The story of the danger they faced. The story of the love they found. And she would always end it the same way. "Never be afraid to open the door," she would say. "You never know what miracles wait on the other side." Her grandchildren would listen with wide eyes. They would ask questions. They would beg for more details. And Celestine would smile. She would look at Thorne, who sat beside her, still handsome even with silver in his hair, still looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "It was the best decision I ever made," she would say. And Thorne would take her hand. "It was the best decision we both made." Because that night, in the rain, two lives collided. Two hearts found each other, and two people who had been lost discovered they were exactly where they belonged. Together. And that was a love worth every risk, a love worth every danger, a love worth every moment. The kind of love that stories are made of, the kind of love that lasts forever.